My name is Haley. I'm 32, a single mother, and I work 3 jobs just to survive, just to scrape together food. And here I am, standing at the checkout line in this fancy supermarket, and the air is thick as syrup. I frantically count the crumpled dollars in my uniform pocket. They still smell of cleaning fluid from my morning shift. My hands are shaking. I feel my mother's gaze on me, heavy, piercing. It's like it's squeezing my stomach into a tight, anxious knot. I try to smile weakly, handing the cashier this pathetic stack of $1 bills. "Look, Mom, I can do this. I can do it myself." Suddenly her hand, cold, clinging, grabs my wrist. All the noise, the hum of the store fades away as if someone turned off the sound. She looks straight into my eyes, and there is no anger in them, only the deepest, most bone-chilling confusion. "Haley," her voice cuts through the silence, "why are you paying cash? You have a VIP card, the one I sent." My heart skips a beat and then freezes. The cashier froze, looking at us. These words, they just don't add up in my head. They make no sense. None. "What?" is all I can manage. My mother leans closer, her whisper now filled not with alarm, but with some terrifying guess. "A black card, honey, with a limit of $10,000 a month. For you and Noah. Where is it?" My legs buckle. The truth, cruel and obvious, hits me like a hammer, right here at the checkout conveyor belt. For you to understand this shock, this paralysis, you have to go back 6 months to the moment I arrived in Atlanta. Back then, I had 2 suitcases, my 5-year-old Noah, and a void left inside after a divorce that had scorched my soul and bank account to the ground. My only beacon was my older sister, Kylie. I believed the family was a safety net that would never let me down. She welcomed us into her apartment with a wide smile. I so desperately wanted to believe it was warmth, not calculation. And then, on that very first night, Kylie laid down the rules. "I have to protect you, Haley," she said, adjusting the sofa cushion, "from your financial naivety." She took over all the long-term issues and communication with my mother. And my job? Earn cash. For food. For living. Right now. She sat me down, took my hands, and told me a story that turned the world gray. Supposedly, my mother was furious about my divorce, that she cut off all support to teach me a lesson in independence. A ton of guilt crushed me. This was me, my failure. I pushed my own mother away. Kylie nodded, full of sympathy. "I'll fix this, but you need to prove you can do it yourself. Earn back our respect." I agreed, without a single question. My self-esteem back then was like the shards of a broken vase, nothing to pick up. And the proof looked like this: a 4 a.m. alarm, pitch black Atlanta outside. I'm a cleaner in a glass corporate tower downtown. I scrub toilets for people who won't even notice my face. The smell of bleach has ingrained my skin, ingrained my lungs. It stays with me even after I shower. By 7, I'm rushing back to get Noah ready for daycare, and then to my second job. Lunch shift at a noisy cafe. Heavy trays, aching backs, cheap shoes that make my feet burn. Every penny, every dollar went into the jar on the kitchen counter, the one Kylie had access to. "Your money only covers the bare necessities," she sighed, taking the cash. 2 adults, that's a huge drain on the budget. I accepted everything she said. Without a second thought, I simply didn't have the mental energy to argue or recount bills. My life in this apartment was one continuous reminder. You're second-class citizens here. Kylie occupied the spacious bedroom, her kingdom. It was always a perfectly cool 68 degrees, even when Atlanta was melting in the summer heat outside. She slept on a huge bed with expensive linens that smelled of lavender and money. And Noah and I? Our bedroom was the sticky leather sofa in the living room. It grew hot during the day and radiated such heat at night that sleep was torture. The air conditioning here, as Kylie politely noted, unfortunately doesn't work. Humidity hung in the air like a thick, heavy blanket. I'd wake up in the middle of the night drenched in sweat and see the blue glow of the TV flickering from under her door. "I research stocks, manage our investments," she'd say in the morning as I brewed coffee like a zombie. "It's for our future, Haley. You wouldn't understand it anyway." And I believed it. I'd look at that light from under the door and think, she cares about us. She doesn't sleep. And I accepted the gap between her cool world and our stuffy world as payment. Payment for the roof. It would be worse outside, I'd whisper to myself, falling asleep to Noah's steady snores. I just need to work harder. 3 months. 3 months of this hell. And the quiet crack in my soul began to turn into an abyss. Everything collapsed one morning, an ordinary Tuesday, when I was frantically getting Noah ready for daycare. I knelt down to tie his shoelaces and froze. His big toe was sticking out of his sneaker. The rubber sole was peeling off like old leather. They were the same shoes we'd worn when we left his father's 6 months ago. I tried to fill in the hole with a black marker. Shame, searing, acrid, rose in my throat. Sending my child out into the world in such rags, it was physical pain. I waited until the school bus left and then returned to the apartment. Our financial reality awaited me. Kylie was sitting at the kitchen island, sipping her signature iced coffee through a straw. She was scrolling through her tablet, an air of complete relaxed indifference. I took a deep breath, trying to control the trembling in my hands. Asking her for money was like entering a tiger's cage. "Kylie," my voice sounded hoarse, "Noah needs new sneakers. Now. Can I just take $50 from what you've been saving?" She didn't even look up. She just snorted sharply, contemptuously. I flinched. Finally, her gaze slowly moved up my figure. There was no anger in it, only a mixture of pity and disgust that made me shrink, seeming smaller. "Haley, do you have the nerve to ask me for cash?" Her voice was quiet and poisonous. "When you don't even cover your share of the utilities?" She began listing, calmly, methodically, all the mythical bills she supposedly paid for us. I tried to get a word in edgewise. "But I give you every tip, every cent." She interrupted me with a wave of her hand. Her perfect manicure glinted in the chandelier light. "Stop being a parasite. Learn to finally manage your own life. It was this irresponsible attitude toward money that made you a penniless single mother." I left the apartment. Tears stung my eyes, but I didn't let them go. Arguing was pointless. It would only lead to her threatening to kick us out. I needed those shoes now. Today. With tears in my eyes, I downloaded the food delivery app and signed up as a driver for the night shift. My nights became a blur. Dark, unfamiliar parts of Atlanta where not all the lights were on. Fast food deliveries to unfamiliar voices from behind doors. I prayed that my rickety car wouldn't stall somewhere in the middle of nowhere. The exhaustion of 3 jobs had already eaten into my bones. My legs felt heavy as lead every time I dragged them back up the stairs to my apartment. The isolation deepened a few weeks later. I popped home between shifts and saw a thick blue envelope on the counter. My heart sank. I recognized that elegant, ornate handwriting. Mom. My hand reached out to it, to this shred of hope. But Kylie was faster. She snatched the envelope as if she'd been waiting for this moment, and with a slight dismissive wave, tossed it into the trash. "Don't worry." Her voice was flat, lifeless. "It's just another junk mailer addressed to an old tenant. You need to stop obsessing over the mail, Haley. Mom's too busy enjoying her retirement to write letters." To disappointment. Her control extended to the digital world as well. Our only interaction with my mother, a Sunday video call, was a carefully staged performance. Kylie held the phone, the camera angled so that only our smiling faces were in the frame. Not a hint of the cramped living room, the old sofa. Before each call, she leaned toward me, and her whisper burned my ear with icy fear. "One tear. One plaintive word about life here, and you and Noah will be spending the night at the shelter tonight. Understood?" I nodded, a pained, forced smile frozen on my face. Whenever my mother's face appeared on the screen, I lied. I lied through my teeth, feeling Kylie's predatory gaze on me. "We're doing great, Mom," my false voice rang out. "The job search is underway. Kylie is an angel for taking us in." The pain of this lie was unbearable. I saw my mother peering into my tired eyes through the screen, but Kylie deftly moved the camera away and began talking about her successes, about investments, completely cutting off any chance for me to signal, any hint of truth. The silence of one sultry Tuesday was shattered by a piercing ringtone. Kylie's smartphone lay on the kitchen counter, vibrating as if in panic. I was just sorting through the laundry when I saw her approach it, look at the screen, and all the blood drained from her face. She answered. Her voice, always so commanding and firm with me, became thin, almost childish. "Hello? Mom?" Then a long pause. She listened, and her face went completely blank, white as paper. She ended the call, put the phone down, and slowly turned to me. Her eyes were wide with pure animal fear. They read the impending catastrophe. "Mom," she said, and the words seemed to burn her lips. "She has a layover in Atlanta this weekend. She wants to stop by, see how we live." Panic gripped her instantly. My cold, calculating sister turned into a fidgety whirlwind of nervous energy. "Call your bosses," she barked orders at me. "The cleaning service, the cafe. Tell me you're taking 2 unpaid days, now." "But Kylie, tips, Noah's lunches," I tried to object. Her look, full of the promise of cruel retribution, silenced me. There were no arguments. We spent the next 48 hours erasing all evidence from the apartment, evidence of her luxury and our poverty. I watched in complete silence as she gathered up her collection of designer bags, those bright, expensive pieces of leather, and hid them in the mop and bucket closet. Her several $100 coffee machine went there too. "Scrubbing everything until it shines," she commanded, and my back was already aching. Baseboards, windows, every crevice. She needs to see a respectable, modest home. No luxury, no truth. She took down the expensive online prints from the walls and replaced them with bland prints from a debt collection box to create the illusion of a modest, unpretentious home. And when the physical transformation of the apartment was complete, she took on me, my story. She pinned me against the kitchen wall while I wiped down the counter. Her fingers dug into my shoulders with such force that I winced in pain. "Look at me, Haley. Listen. You're going to tell Mom that you're completely independent, that I'm just helping you get back on your feet. Understand?" I nodded slowly, too tired to resist. But that wasn't enough. She squeezed my shoulders even tighter, her eyes turning icy. "You have to understand this, little sister. If you let anything slip about money, about work, Mom will see you as a failure. The poor girl who drags her successful sister down. Is that how you want her to think of you?" Fear, sticky, cold, slithered down my spine. Fear of being rejected by the only family I had left. I nodded again, this time resignedly, and she pounded this scenario into my head over and over again until I learned to repeat the lie in an even, dispassionate voice, never looking away. By Friday evening, I was a living bundle of nerves, standing by the door and listening to every sound from the street. And then she appeared. Mom. With that natural elegance and warmth I'd been sorely lacking all these months. She walked into the hallway, smelling of cleaning fluid, in her linen suit, and she smelled of lavender and home. She immediately opened her arms to embrace us both. I stepped into those arms, and tears welled up in my eyes. Her presence was like a breath of fresh air after so much suffocation, like a safety I'd begun to forget existed. She held me for a long moment. Then she pulled back to look at me, her brows furrowed in genuine, deep concern. "Oh my God, Haley, you're all skin and bones under those clothes." I opened my mouth. The words, "I'm skipping meals so Noah can eat," were about to burst out. But Kylie was faster. She stepped between us, gently but insistently, a bright, false smile spreading across her face. Her hand rested on my shoulder, her nails digging warningly into my skin. "She's absolutely obsessed with this intermittent fasting thing, Mom. She wants to get back to her pre-baby figure, you know." Her voice was light, playful. I nodded weakly, confirming the lie. My skin burned beneath my sister's nails. Mom shook her head in disbelief, but didn't press the issue, turning her attention to Noah. The evening passed in a haze of forced mirth, where I watched every word like a minefield. The dinner Kylie cooked was simple but filling, not like our usual canned soups. After everyone had left, I lay on my couch in the living room, listening to the night sounds of the apartment. And then I heard the creaking of floorboards from her bedroom. Then a dull sound, like something heavy being dragged across the floor. It seemed she was moving furniture or taking something from the depths of a closet, now that she thought everyone was asleep. These mysterious rustlings lasted for almost an hour, and a heavy, nagging unease settled in the pit of my stomach, impossible to shake. What else was she hiding behind her locked door? Early that morning, Kylie announced she had a terrible migraine. She appeared at the threshold of her room with a silk mask on her forehead and dramatically whispered that she needed absolute silence and darkness. "I just can't," she moaned, covering her eyes with her hand. "My head is splitting." I suspected it was just an excuse, to avoid another day with Mom, or just to be alone in my apartment, which had been reclaimed from us. Her absence meant that I would have to accompany Mom to the store for real food for Noah alone. Mom insisted on whole foods. "A growing body needs nutrients, not cheap processed foods," she said firmly, and her words burned me with shame. Because those processed foods were exactly what we were surviving on. Walking through those spacious aisles of Whole Foods, smelling of expensive coffee, was like an excursion into another reality. A reality where price tags are just numbers, not a death sentence. Where you can grab a jar of something organic from the shelf without checking your bank account balance. Mom energetically pushed the cart, and it filled up like lightning. Marbled Wagyu beef, organic berries in pretty boxes, cheeses with twisted labels. Each item cost more than I earned in an entire grueling shift at the cafe. I followed her, and the knot of anxiety in my stomach tightened. I tried to whisper, "Mom, maybe I should get this cheese? It's almost the same, but cheaper." She waved my words away with a light, carefree laugh that made me feel stupid and poor. She thought I was just being thrifty. She didn't see how my stomach was clenching with dread at the final bill. And then we were at the checkout. The rhythmic, inexorable beep, beep, beep of the scanner counted down our bill. I watched as the numbers on the display grew, turned into a monstrous number, and finally stopped. $723.16. The world swam for a second. My hands started shaking on their own. I reached into my purse for the envelope with my emergency funds, the tips I'd been saving, coin by coin. I poured the crumpled, tattered bills onto the tape, dollars, fives. Behind us, someone sighed. Someone shifted from foot to foot. Shame burned my cheeks. Paying for such luxury with these dirty, sweat-smelling bills was the most humiliating thing I'd ever done. Mom watched my pathetic attempt for a few seconds in silence. Then her hand, warm, confident, lay over mine, stopping the countdown. "Haley, stop." I looked up at her, tears already blurring my vision. "Mom, I have no other choice. Just let me pay." She looked at me, not with anger, with some chilling mixture of bewilderment and irritation. It pierced my shame like a knife. "Put that money away, now. I don't understand what game you're playing with me, Haley." Her whisper was sharp and quiet so the cashier wouldn't hear. I looked at her, confused. "What game? I'm trying to pay." She leaned closer, her eyes dark and terrifying. "Where's the card, my daughter?" she hissed. That same black American Express card with the $10,000 monthly limit, the one I sent you 6 months ago? The air between us seemed thick. The words hung there like a heavy, alien object. I stared at her in complete, utter confusion. "About what card?" Her entire face changed. The color drained, leaving only a paleness. She saw that my confusion was genuine, that it wasn't rebellion, it was ignorance. "I sent it express delivery, 2 weeks after you moved to Atlanta." Her voice began to break, a hint of mounting rage and horror building. Kylie herself confirmed to me over the phone that she received the envelope. She said she personally delivered it to you that same day. At that moment, the world turned upside down. Not metaphorically, physically. The floor fell away from under me, and all the pieces of the puzzle, her luxury, my 3 jobs, her cold stares, my shame, came together into one terrifying, sickening picture. Everything I was dying of exhaustion from, everything I blamed myself for, all this hell. Her comfort, her bags, her cool bedroom, all of it was paid for with my money. With money Mom sent me. Mom looked at me for another moment, and then her face froze. Not with anger, with something worse. A cold, icy, quiet fury. I'd never seen her like this. Never. She turned sharply to the cashier, confused by our scene. "Leave it all. We're not taking it." Without thinking about the abandoned grocery cart, about the people in line, she grabbed my hand. Her grip was iron. She almost dragged me out of the store and into the parking lot. Her movements carried the energy of realization. Terrifying. Monstrous. The realization that her own daughter had been lying to her face for 6 months, while her other daughter was dying of exhaustion in silence. "Get in the car, now." Her voice brooked no argument. "We're going back, to this apartment. We'll sort this all out." The drive back was terrifying in its silence. The tension in her luxury sedan thickened with each mile. She gripped the leather steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles turned white. I was afraid the material would snap. I sat, paralyzed, as my mind raced through the kaleidoscope of the last 6 months. The truth had torn the blindfold from my eyes, and now I saw all the cracks, all the deceptions that had kept me submissive and miserable. We pulled into the complex's parking lot. Mom turned off the engine without a word and got out. Her gait was frighteningly determined. I stumbled after her quick steps, my trembling hands fumbling for my keys in my purse. We were at the door. I barely had time to insert the key into the lock when she pushed me aside and swung the door open so hard the entire frame shook. I expected darkness and silence. Kylie had a debilitating migraine, after all. But the reality that crashed into us was a deafening cacophony. Explosions, gunshots, screams thundered from the living room, the sound of a video game so loud it rattled the windows. But beneath this digital hell, I heard something else, a sound that froze my blood and made my heart sink. Sobbing. Childish, heartbreaking, full of despair. Maternal instinct kicked in faster than thought. I rushed to the kitchen and froze in the doorway. This image will forever remain in my nightmares. Noah, my baby. He sat on the cold linoleum next to an overflowing trash can. Tears streamed down his dirty, flushed cheeks. In his small hand, he clutched a discarded, dried-out pizza crust. He tried to chew it, choking on sobs to satisfy the hunger pangs in his belly. He looked up at me, wide, filled with agonizing bewilderment and pain. "Mommy, I was so hungry, and Aunt Kylie wouldn't wake up to give me food." I fell to my knees before him, snatched the dirty crust away, hugged him, and buried my face in his hair, unable to contain my own sobs. Behind me, in the doorway, Mom made a strangled sound, a mixture of horror and suffocation. And then the sound turned into a low, animalistic growl, the roar of a mother watching her child suffer. She spun on her heel and stormed into the living room. There, where the source of all this unconsciousness reigned. Kylie was sprawled on the couch, completely comfortable. She was wearing large gaming headphones, completely drowning out the world. She was yelling into the microphone, her fingers frantically running over the controller with a dexterity that certainly didn't suggest a migraine. Mom didn't say anything. She simply walked over and forcefully pulled the TV's power cord out of the outlet. The room was plunged into a deafening, ringing silence. Kylie screamed in surprise, jumped up, and tore off her headphones in a panic. Seeing us, her eyes widened in shock. She immediately tried to pull a mask of suffering onto her face and clutched her head. "You, so early," she muttered. I was just trying to distract myself from the pain with a game. My head is splitting." Her excuse hung in the air like a dead weight. Mom looked at her with such disgust, it seemed it could burn a hole in the wall. She didn't say a word. She simply turned and walked with a determined, quick stride toward the master bedroom door, the very door that was always locked. Kylie gasped and tried to rush forward, rolling over the couch, but Mom was driven by an unstoppable force, rage mingled with terror. "Take one more step." Mom's voice was quiet and icy, like steel. "And the next person you talk to will be the police. You'll explain to them why a child is looking for food in a trash can." Kylie froze in her tracks. The word police paralyzed her. Mom easily walked past and threw open the bedroom door. Luckily, this time it was unlocked. I picked up Noah and walked out into the hallway just as Mom began her search. No screaming, no breaking anything, with methodical, terrifying precision, as if she were defusing a bomb. Her gaze swept across the room and fell on the space under the massive bed. She bent down and forcefully pulled out a large, heavy shoebox. She was covered in dust. A pitiful, animalistic groan came from the living room, the sound of utter defeat. It was Kylie. Mom ripped off the lid, and an abyss was revealed. The box was crammed with crumpled receipts: Gucci, Louis Vuitton, jewelers' receipts. Empty bottles of premium whiskey lay scattered among them. One of them cost more than I paid for rent in my last house. Mom reached into this pile of shame and pulled out a sleek, black envelope, branded, expensive. It had been ripped open. She stuck her fingers inside and pulled out it. A heavy, black titanium card. It glinted in the lamplight like a shard of night. Mom turned to me. A tear rolled down her cheek. She held the card up for me to see. And I saw it. Clear, crisp, embossed on the metal. Haley. "She stole your life," Mom whispered, her voice breaking. "She bought it with your money, watching you struggle. Transaction after transaction." The sight of my name on that damn card, it broke something inside me forever. It wasn't just a lie. It was an outrage. While my son starved, her life was paid for with my name. Kylie froze in the doorway, white as a sheet. Her eyes darted from the evidence box to her mother's face, searching for a way out that wasn't there. Mom didn't give her a second to lie. She clutched a handful of those crumpled receipts in her fist and threw them straight at Kylie's face. The heavy card followed. It hit her collarbone with a dull thud and clattered to the floor, while a shower of receipts rained down around her. Mom stepped through the chaos, walked right up to her daughter, and screamed, not raising her voice, but shouting each word so loudly that it sent shivers down her spine. "Explain, right now. I want to hear why your sister is scrubbing other people's toilets at 4 a.m. while you live like a queen on her money." Kylie winced as if she'd been struck. But her habit of lying, her habit of controlling took over. She straightened, her chin quivering, a mask of righteous indignation creeping across her face. She stepped over the credit card lying on the floor, looking as if it were dirt. I was keeping it for her own safety." Her voice trembled, but she tried to sound convincing. "We all know how Haley is after the divorce. She's emotionally unstable. She would have blown it all in a week." She gave me a look of pure, unadulterated contempt, as if I were the criminal, as if I had ruined everything. I was protecting her from herself, from her irresponsibility. She has no idea how to handle money, how to run a house. And then something inside me snapped. The cold, quiet rage I'd been pent up for months welled up from the depths and burned all the fear, all the shame to the ground. I stepped forward, standing next to my mother. My finger trembled as I pointed toward the kitchen where my son sat. You protected? My voice was hoarse but firm. You protected us while my child was looking for food in the trash? While you were engrossed in your toys and didn't even hear him cry? Is this your protection? I reached into my pocket and pulled out her smartphone, the same one I'd picked up in the kitchen while she was screaming at her game. I unlocked the screen, she never changed the password, too confident, and held the glowing face of the device up to her face. "What is this?" I asked, my voice sounding alien. "Explain it to me." A notification from the bank lit up the screen. Transaction confirmation. In-game currency purchase, $500. Time, 12:47. Less than an hour ago. "You refused me $50 for shoes for your nephew," I said, each letter falling like a stone. "And an hour later, you spent 10 times that amount on virtual coins. In your fantasy universe, while in the real world, your nephew was rummaging through trash." Kylie opened her mouth, but Mom silenced her with a single look. That look was like an icy void. It held nothing but utter rejection. Without a word, Mom pulled her phone out of her purse. Her movements were measured, precise, as if she were performing a long-rehearsed ritual. She dialed the number, never taking her eyes off her daughter, who suddenly seemed a stranger, a dangerous person to her. "Hello? Yes, I need the police. At the address?" Her voice was steely, without a trace of tremor. "There has been a grand theft and child endangerment. Yes, I'm waiting." She hung up and immediately dialed another number, the family lawyer. "Michael, it's Suzanne. We're in crisis. Activate every possible charge. Family ties don't count. No leniency." As she spoke, Kylie underwent a strange metamorphosis. Her arrogance, her false righteousness, it all collapsed like a house of cards. Her face contorted, and she began to sob. Not beautifully, but with a desperate, hideous wail, full of the knowledge that the game was finally lost. Time stretched, and then blue flashes flickered in the living room windows. Flickering lights flooded the walls, casting ominous shadows. The police entered the apartment. Their gaze, professional and impartial, slid over the luxury of the bedroom, over the designer boxes, and moved to our pitiful sofa, to the blankets on the floor. Mom calmly, as if at a business meeting, handed the senior officer a box of receipts and a black card. Her explanation was brief and to the point. No hysteria, just the facts. Facts that hit a mother's broken heart. The officer listened, nodded, and approached Kylie. His voice was even and official. "Kylie Stevens, you are being held on suspicion of identity theft, a felony, and endangering the life of a minor." Kylie froze, as if those words had sucked the last breath out of her. Her entire world, built on lies, collapsed in an instant. The police grabbed her wrists and pulled them behind her. And then there was a sound. Clear, metallic, inexorable. Click. That sound broke something inside her completely. She screamed, not a scream, but a primal, animalistic roar that made Noah shudder in my arms and tighten his grip on my neck. She began to struggle, and her gaze, filled with the blackest, most venomous hatred, pierced me as she was dragged toward the exit. "Ungrateful creature," she screamed, her voice breaking into a shriek. "I gave you shelter, and this is gratitude? You're going to pay me for everything. You ruined everything because of your envy." She screamed obscenities, curses, pouring out the very filth that had always been inside her. Her mother stood in the doorway and watched as the officers loaded her daughter into the back seat of the patrol car. There were no tears or regret on her face, only emptiness and determination. She waited until the door slammed, until the siren wailed, carrying her firstborn away. And then, in the ensuing silence, she pronounced her sentence into the empty hallway. "You are no longer my daughter, because family does not devour its own to satisfy its greed." I watched out the window as the car disappeared around the corner, and I felt the heavy, invisible chains, the chains of duty, guilt, and fear, crumbling beneath my feet into fine, harmless dust. The nightmare was over, and the silence that reigned in the apartment was the sweetest, most beautiful sound in the world. 6 months later, the stifling Atlanta humidity finally retreated, giving way to a light, cool autumn breeze. It blew away the last shreds of memories of that terrible summer. I stood in my kitchen, spacious, sunny, in our new townhouse, and hummed softly as I kneaded dough. The granite countertop felt cool under my palms. The air was filled with magical smells, warm cinnamon, fresh milk, and living, rising sourdough. This smell was light years away from the acrid stench of bleach that had once ingrained my skin. My little bakery, a long-buried dream crushed by the weight of simple survival. And now, my beautiful, crisp, happy-smelling reality. The reality my mother helped build, giving me back not only my money, but also my belief in my worth. Noah burst through the back door, smelling of the autumn wind, his knees in the dirt, and a smile on his face. Not the frightened one he'd had 6 months ago, but bright, carefree, infectious. The smile of a child who knows he's welcomed and loved at home. My friend Sarah followed him in, carrying an armful of sunflowers like little suns and a bottle of sparkling juice. "To your first profitable week, entrepreneur," she shouted, and we burst into laughter. We sat in my little garden on the furniture I'd bought myself, with my own money, and we laughed loudly, not looking toward the door, not fearing anyone's wrath. Sarah reached across the table and squeezed mine. Her eyes were soft and proud. "I'm so glad to see you like this, standing up straight." After all this time, when you cowered in the shadows, these words, this support, unconditional, demanding nothing in return, were like a balm. Slowly, day by day, they healed my wounded capacity to trust. We raised our glasses to new beginnings. I watched Noah dive squealing into a pile of leaves in the backyard. His backyard. Our home. The place where he was safe. While I was building this new life of peace and quiet, Kylie was paying the bills for the one she stole. The court was lenient on her, a suspended sentence instead of prison. But the real prison, it turns out, is social. She built it for herself. One day, on my way to the wholesaler for flour, I saw her. From the car window on the packed highway, in an acid orange vest. She was picking up trash on the side of the road, court-mandated community service. Her face, even from a distance, was one continuous burn of humiliation. She skewered burger wrappers under the warden's impassive gaze. All her former self-importance, her pomp, had evaporated. A felony conviction had branded her. The world of corporate elevators and expensive lunches she had so coveted had slammed its doors in her face. She now lived in a rent-by-the-hour motel on the outskirts of town. No landlord would bother with a con artist. The friends she had once showered with gifts had vanished, along with her money and reputation. Mom had kept her word. There were no contacts. It had been a tragic fall, but a fall according to her own plan, drawn up by lies, according to $1 stolen from her own sister and nephew. I didn't slow down. I didn't stop. I realized that her path was no longer my responsibility, not my burden. I returned to the bakery. The bell above the door rang, welcoming a new line. The fatigue at the end of the day was now pleasant, creative, the fatigue of creation, not of surviving someone else's cruelty. I wiped the flour from my hands and smiled. A realization washed over me in a quiet, confident wave. I was finally the author of my own life again. Not a co-author, not a victim, an author. This hell had taught me blind trust is not a virtue, but a poison, the most dangerous, because it is administered by those whose blood flows in your veins. Family is not an indulgence for exploitation, and true love will never ask you to pay for it with your dignity or the well-being of your child. Financial independence is not just a bank account. It is the only true freedom. And the ability to set boundaries is not rigidity. It is the highest form of self-love. Expect others to save you, and you could lose everything. Sometimes you have to be your own hero, the one and only. Thank you for walking this path with me. From the deepest pit of betrayal to this sunny beginning, scented with cinnamon and hope. Let my story be a reminder. Check your accounts. Don't let anyone control your life through fear. And remember, you are stronger than you think when it's dark all around. And now I want to hear from you. What do you think about how I survived all this? Let me know in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, like and subscribe. This is where we share real stories, because they are how we learn to live.